Welcome back to the Forge for another Rusty production. Today we've got some maintenance to do. So this is not the video that I wanted to shoot today. This is the video I'm going to have to shoot today because my forge is finally dead. And not the forge itself, but just these wings that actually go on either side. And for anybody who's been watching my videos for any length of time, you'll know that that's how I've got my brake drum forge working. I'll bring you over there just to quickly show you what's going on. All right, so here's the forge in its current state. This was in here like so. And these wings are basically used to create sort of this self-feeding mechanism so that I keep the heat concentrated around this part here, which you can see means that unless I've got some thick steel, and this is not thick steel, when we get up to forge welding heat, we really start to eat away at some of that metal. So I did try to do it just with the one on the side there, and what ends up happening, and the instruction that I had early on was if I just had an open brake drum forge, I'm going to lose a lot of heat. And so you can get fire bricks in there, you can do all sorts, but one of the methods that I saw to actually keep the heat in there and have it feed itself was by putting these wings on the side, and that's worked incredibly well. So until now. So I'm not able to do the sort of heat work that I need to do until I correct this issue. So what I've been able to do is get some new stock, and I'm going to go about replicating this like I did in the previous video. But this time round, hopefully I know what I'm going to be doing a little bit more, because that was the first time I'd ever welded. And you can see there, that's what's left of my weld back from them, but most of this is from the new heat. But let me show you what I've got and we can get started. So I went and visited my my father's place, and I got a whole bunch of new things. So there's something I can use as a bracket. That's probably too thin for what I need it for, but this will be great that I can use these as brackets for the new wings on the forge. How good's this? There's a hammer that wasn't being used. I'm actually going to turn that into a rounding hammer. So I'll round out the end of that. It's got a little bit of damage, so we'll be able to cut that back. That looks pretty cool. This, I'm not sure what we're going to do with this big plate of steel, but it's nice and thick, so we can talk about that later. And this we're going to be probably putting underneath the vise at some point, just to give it a little bit more weight in that area on the table, so that it doesn't rock around as much. But for today, this is what we're working with. It is again checker plate steel. It's a little bit rusty, but it's a lot thicker. So hopefully you can see. Let me see if I can get that to focus there. It's probably about twice as thick as the previous stock that I had, and so hopefully it will last twice as long. That's yet to be seen, but this is what I'm going to be using today. It's just about the right size, so perfect for our purposes. And all I need to do is use the old one as a template, cut it out with the angle grinder, and then weld it all together. All right, so first things first, here's our old plate, and guess what? It is millimeters off the exact right length or width that we need. So that's perfect. I'm really happy with that. So what I'm going to do is just use this existing one to mark out a few spots on the new, and I'll use this laundry marker to just create a couple of marks here and here, and then we'll measure in for the rest, just so that I can get it relatively square. there we go. Let's work from this, see how it fits inside the forge, make any minor adjustments, and then duplicate. All right, so it goes in like so. Well, I think that's just about perfect, isn't it? All right, probably knock some of this rust off there, clean it up a little bit, but I'm just going to duplicate that one, then we'll make the brackets for the back, and yeah, hell of a lot faster than the first time. All right, so there's one, there's two. I'm just going to, I've just got the flapper wheel on here, and I'm just going to deburr the edges. I'll just stick them all on a vise, and then I'll also just do the back here where I'm going to be welding it so that it's a nice clean surface. So I've removed the back of the other one that was there that hadn't completely melted through. And you can see on the back, this is the bracket that I'm working with. So I created a bracket hole here for the screw that goes basically through like so. That screws down onto the brake drum. And I've made it sort of flexible so I can move it back and forth as needed. So I want to create something very similar to that. And in fact, ideally, the same as that, because that worked very, very well. So I've just got a different type of steel that I want to use for this part. It's a little bit thicker. I'll show you what that looks like now. So as you can see, here's the other piece. It's definitely thicker than the existing stuff. But again, I don't want that to melt through once I start getting up to these higher heats. But what I can do is I can actually use the size of it basically to measure out this piece here. So what I might do is just get a piece of paper and measure along here and just get the length, and then I can measure it onto here and I can cut my holes accordingly. Just mark it at the end like that. It doesn't have to be millimeter perfect, so this is pretty rough, I understand that. Just means that from here, I do need to get fairly specific with my measurements, just so I can get the holes exactly where I want them. So I might even leave a little bit more than that, but basically that's what I'm looking at. There's the length of our piece. Here's where I need my holes basically centered within there, and I'll use the drill press to do the initial two, and then we'll probably just grind between them. The only problem here is this looks like this is actually going to be not enough for two pieces, so let's just have a look at where that comes out at. Yeah, we're about 1.5 centimeters too short. So what I might end up doing is I'll actually shorten a piece on the back here. I don't need to have it come up as far this time, I don't believe, because the steel's a lot thicker, so it's going to actually hold itself together. It doesn't need that backing strength. So what I might do is I'll cut off that margin, get rid of that line, and then we'll come in from here. Probably even half that distance is probably fine. So we'll go, that's the correct one. So we'll go from there, we'll go round, come in at that, and then that gives us, yeah, exactly there. So there's our line. Now if I cut exactly through that center part, then we'll be in the right spot. closing up a little bit on that so I can actually straighten it out a bit. I might be able to actually do that. Give it another go. Alright, so I've got my two pieces. I now need to drill holes through them. So, what I might actually do, I don't know if this will measure correctly. Okay. Put a hole there, and a hole there. And what we can do is just go between those two holes. Not 100% square, but it does fit, so this is just about the right size that we want. There's our two holes. Now I'll just cut between them, and we'll have our slot. So I'm just going to do the other one. I was going to do it on this side, but I've realised I can't really get in there properly. So I'm just going to, I've turned around the other side and I've punched on this side. Quick little tip. If the metal's going up, you can actually lie it flat. Might be useful. All right, I'll just drill this side now. And then I'll come back. Hey, so you didn't get to see most of that, I believe. I think I didn't record it all. I'll know when I'm editing. This is what we ended up with. You can see I've actually made an absolute mess of it. So, I've got lines coming up through there. It doesn't really matter. I mean, these things are going to go underneath soot behind the wings anyway. So I'm not too fussed, but I would like to know, is there a good trick for drilling holes and then cutting the space between those holes? Hacksaw didn't do it. This is quite thick stuff. The hacksaw kept stuffing up, and that's probably because I've got a cheap hacksaw. But here we are. So the next thing I'm going to do is bend the metal. Now, I don't have the forge going. I could get it going, and I could heat it up to bend it. Last time I didn't need to. I'm going to try to just use a hammer and the vise to actually bend these in the direction I want. Hopefully they're not going to snap. Let's try it anyway. Whoops. It's not as clean as the other one. It doesn't quite come down as hard there, so I'll see what I can do about that. But that's pretty much what I was after. Okay, so here's our two brackets. Basically, they will go like that, and they're pretty much the same, which is good. Backing plate will come in like so and lean up against them. Now, one thing you might notice already is that's quite a high angle that it's sitting at, and I can look at that too because I've got my existing old one, and you can see if I put the two next to each other, like so. That clearly this has to come back a little bit more. So I'm just going to give it a couple more whacks in the vise, bring it back on that angle, and then we'll look to weld. And a few more whacks. Just going to come back a little bit further. Might actually have to hit it from the other side. That's about it. Just check with this other plate. Yeah, that's about the grade I want it on. Just check it against the forge and I'll come back. All right, welcome back to my messy workbench. So what I'm going to do is put this up against my bracket. Specifically where I want it to sit. Now it's got to sit with a straight back on it, but it's actually going to extend. It's going to extend past the edge of this, so it actually is going to be parallel to the. Oh, there you can't even see. It's going to it's going to extend past the edge of this lip, so it'll end up being parallel to this here. So that's what I've got to check in with, just to make sure that I've got the right spot. Relatively flat surface on this bench, so we can use that as our guide. There's our mark there, and you can see like there's half an inch on the bottom of it that I wouldn't have accounted for had I just, you know, put it on. I would have put it on square. So that's where it's got to go. Now I will just check left to right on the forge to make sure that it actually is going to sit in the center, and then we'll come back and we'll finalize the weld. So just checking it in there, I've actually got a good bit of leeway each way on the edge there, but approximately the center is here. If we can lay that out on that spot, right on that corner, we are golden. So to do that, what we want to do is we want to lock it in place. We get a couple of clamps. And what I'll do first is I'll just do some tack welds. Have it sit in the right spot. Now the other thing too is this is quite thick steel here and thinner down here, but it's not too bad. So I've just got to be sure that I don't turn the temperature up too high and that I move from the heavy metal to the lighter metal as I'm like moving my puddle of weld across. None of this stuff I knew the first time I did it, so hopefully this will be better. Ooh, too much movement in that. Cool. Okay, so it's relatively thick, but not too thick. So we've got 3.2 mil electrodes. So I just put it on the bench. And I'm going to turn it up to 120. By the way, none of this is plugged in yet, so I am being relatively safe. One thing about this welder is it doesn't have an on-off switch. It's just plugged in or not. That's what we're looking for. I just want to stop that for a sec so I can the other side, make sure I'm not cutting a hole in it. I don't know enough about welding to know my heats, and you can see there that heat spots. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, actually you can. Yeah, you can see 4 spots. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's not burnt right through, but you can see that it's starting to come through. So it's up there. Well, we are tack welded on. What I might do is pull the temperature down by just a touch, and then we can move along there a little bit more easily. I actually turned it up to 130 rather than 120. I think I'll take it back to 120. We'll go from there. Yeah, let's tighten this up just a touch. I don't know if you could hear that creaking. I forgot all about that, but it's basically the metal trying to warp a little bit. So what I might do is I'll just grab another clamp to put on this side, just so that if it does start to warp, it doesn't go in the wrong direction. Try and keep this as flat as possible. Pretty much what we're after. Now we'll just go away and do the second one, then we'll install. Alright, so here's our 2 wings. They're going to go in like so. And you can see in the back there's the hole where the screws need to go through the bracket. And you can see that, can't see that there, it's starting to get a bit dark, but the screw goes through the bracket and then through the hole. Now, the only difference between this setup and the one I had before is that the steel on the bracket is twice as thick as well. So what I did need to do is get some new screws, which are a little bit longer than the original ones. And the only ones I was able to get were zinc plated. So I'll show you how I dealt with that. So normal zinc screws are yellow, and they have a yellow zinc coating over the top of them, which is highly toxic if you burn it. So this is what I've done. You can see that was the yellow there, and I've removed all the zinc coating off the 2 screws here. And I've just left a little bit on the top so you can see what actually happened there, and there's the nuts as well. I removed the zinc. So all I've done is I've put them upside down into a glass of white vinegar, just normal household white vinegar. Left them there for 24 hours, and it's stripped all the zinc off it. So this is far enough away from the heat there that it's not going to be an issue, but if this was in the heat, it would burn and obviously get off a zinc oxide, which is not a good thing to be breathing in. But now it's not. It's going to be absolutely fine. So it may rust a little bit over time, but the heat will keep most of that off. And these are just the right length for the new wings. Alright, so you can see in the back in there I've installed the screws, and they're definitely on there. And it's probably like, I don't know, a couple of mils tighter in here than it was previously, but what you'll see is over time this will shape out a little bit just because of the heat. It will start to open up slightly, but I don't need a lot of room in there because I'm only working with this sort of stock, you know. So it's exactly what I'm after. I want to build the coke up high and reserve as much fuel as I possibly can. So let's get the heat on this baby and get it started. So that's working a hell of a lot better now. This is a bit of an unexpected video. This is not the video I wanted to be doing. This is a video I had to be doing because without that forge working, there's not a lot I can actually do. So if you liked what I did here with actually improving the forge, give us a like. If you want to leave me a comment about how I can do more with the forge going forward, maybe something I can add to it to actually make it even more improved, that'll be fantastic. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe for more upcoming videos, and there's some really interesting ones coming up soon where I'm making something for my daughter's birthday. So subscribe, hit the notification bell just so you get notified when the next video is released. Until next time, thanks so much for watching.